guest. It is indeed a very iconic moment when we celebrate the spirit of our nation's glorious Victory Day, and his presence in our country reflects a continued commitment to peace, progress, and prosperity. I request everyone to be seated. We're going to kick off our program now with the kind permission of our Director General. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, His Excellency Dr. Bendito dos Santos Freitas, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, Mr. Mohammad Tawhid Hussain, Honorable Advisor for Foreign Affairs of the Interim Government of Bangladesh, respected Chair of the session, respected Director General of BISS, delegations from Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste and Bangladesh, Excellencies, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all of you. On behalf of Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, BISS, I, Dr. Razia Sultana, Senior Research Fellow, take this opportunity to welcome you all to today's Eminent Persons Lecture Series on Peace in the Contemporary World, organized by BISS. Today, we are very much honored and privileged to have His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, the Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, as the eminent person of the distinguished event. We are deeply honored by your presence, sir. We're also pleased to have amongst Mr. Mohammad Tawhid Hussain, the Honorable Advisor for Foreign Affairs of the Interim Government of Bangladesh, as the guest of honor. Distinguished participants, today's proceedings will commence with a welcome address by the Director General, BISS, Major General Iftikhar Anis, PSP. Thereafter, today's guest speaker, His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, will deliver his highly anticipated lecture. The session will be open for an engaging and constructive discussion, and following that, Mr. Mohammad Tawhid Hussain, the Honorable Advisor for Foreign Affairs of the Interim Government of Bangladesh, will give his valuable remarks. Finally, Ambassador A.F.M. Ghausal Azam Sarkar, Chairman of this institute, will conclude the program by delivering his vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request today's Chair, Ambassador A.F.M. Ghausal Azam Sarkar, to kindly commence the program. You have the floor, sir. Thank you.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Your Excellency, Mr. Jose Ramos Horta, President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, and the guest of honor today, and the entourage of the Honorable President. Your Excellency, Mr. Mohammad Tawhid Hussain, Honorable Foreign Advisor of the Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Major General Iftikhar Anis, Director General BISS, Excellencies and distinguished diplomats from South and Southeast Asia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, including media friends. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to you all at the Eminent Persons Lecture Series titled The Challenges of Peace in the Contemporary World. Let me begin by paying our homage to the valiant freedom fighters and millions of martyrs, men and women, whose supreme sacrifice and loss of honor brought Bangladesh independence in this month of victory. We also gratefully remember those who laid down their lives and fought for a new Bangladesh in the student-led popular upsurge this year. Our people's struggle and quest for peace and prosperity often meet with challenges, roadblocks, and disruptions, more so in contemporary times, because the world today is increasingly becoming fragmented by exclusionary blocs and alliances, tendency to pursue zero-sum geopolitics, ideological divides, cultural-civilizational revisionism, neocolonial proclivity, shady creation of dependency, politics of securitization, and more. Manifestations are multiple and multi-level, seen in various forms of conflicts, violence, and hostilities in different parts of the world, which in turn affects all nations, including Bangladesh. Roots of conflict and violence lie in ungraduated, self-centered, and unsettled minds, engaged in making constructs, advancing non-state or state-level agenda to the detriment of others, prompting intolerance and provocations. If we take peace as a concept of societal friendship, empathy, and harmony, critical is working together for shared benefits, build peace, culture peace, nourish its values, and create defenses of peace in mind against its challenges. As we thus define the context of this seminar, what could possibly be the best occasion to discuss challenges to peace for which our younger generations have lately sacrificed their lives in the hope of a better future? And who could better be the right person than the eminent Nobel laureate for peace to talk about peace and benefit us with his wisdom? So now we commence the program and invite the Director General BIISS to make his welcome address. Major General Iftekhar Anis, please.
His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, His Excellency Mr. Muhammad Tawhid Hussain, Honorable Foreign Advisor to the Interim Government of Bangladesh, Ambassador AFM Gausul Azam Sarkar, Chairman BIISS, distinguished guests, Excellencies, learned audience, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to you all. We are truly honored and delighted to welcome you all to today's Eminent Persons lecture, where we have the unique privilege to listening to one of the world's foremost champions of peace, His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste. We are truly fortunate to have His Excellency Dr. Ramos Horta, who is an avid promoter of peace and an extraordinary personality whose life embodies resiliency, diplomacy, and an unrelenting dedication to justice. We are truly grateful to have him here with us today. Distinguished audience, His Excellency Dr. Ramos Horta has no doubt lived an impactful life to merit a biography which includes unparalleled accomplishments. To grasp His Excellency's narrative, one must be familiar with the history of Timor-Leste. It is a nation with a history of colonization, initially from the time when Portuguese traders regarded this island as their colony. Although in 1975, following the Carnation Revolution, Portugal abandoned Timor-Leste, but only after 9 days of being independent country, the country again was invaded, which lasted for 24 years. And in the journey of Timor-Leste's road to independence, His Excellency Dr. Ramos Horta played the crucial role in advocating for the Timorese people's struggle for self-determination. During the occupation of Timor-Leste, he became the international voice of the resistance, tirelessly campaigning at the United Nations and other global forums. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta is a towering figure in the global quest for peace and justice. He carried out his people's struggle to international stages with unmatched eloquence and determination. His diplomatic prowess earned him with the Nobel Peace Prize in 1996. After East Timor's hard-won independence in 2002, he initially served as the foreign minister, then Prime Minister, and later as the President, skillfully guiding the young republic through its formative years. A philosopher at heart and a statesman in practice, Dr. Jose Ramos Horta today remains a symbol of inspirations for younger generations with his vision of peace and prosperity. Learned participants, when we say peace in the contemporary world, we need to understand how the changes in the contemporary world shape the term peace. States, laws, constitutions, and laws of civil society, which were the foundations of the international systems of the 20th century, exemplifies a more forward-thinking approach to peace. Hence, contemporary perspective on peace places emphasis on issues pertaining to democracy, human rights, politics, and security. When we look at the complexities of peace, we find that these complexities are multifaceted, shaped by a wave of interwoven challenges that extend far beyond traditional warfare. In an era of globalization, conflicts are no longer confined to borders, but are influenced by economic disparities, excessive militarism, technological advancement, and shifting power dynamics. Furthermore, the aftermath of conflicts often leaves deep scars with issues of displacement, human rights violations, and long-standing grievances requiring nuanced, multifaceted solutions. Therefore, achieving peace today demands not only resolving immediate political disputes, but addressing underlying structural inequalities and fostering cooperation in an increasingly fragmented world. Ladies and gentlemen, if we look for a voice that can elucidate the complexities of peace in the turbulent world that we live in today, we can find only a few personalities. And I strongly believe His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta is one of those figures. And I firmly believe that the topic of today's lecture, Peace in the Contemporary World, is extremely relevant to understand how to achieve lasting peace in today's world, and which is marked by complex conflicts, geopolitical tensions, and shifting alliances. Allow me to express once again our profound gratitude to His Excellency for making time to share his wisdom with us. We eagerly look forward to hearing about his experience and his vision for global peace in today's ever-changing world. I also extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for being here today. Your presence reflects a shared commitment to dialogue, understanding, and the pursuit of peace. Without further ado, please join us in giving a warm and respectful welcome to His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, the Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Director General, BIISS. I would take this privilege now to invite His Excellency Mr. Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste. We would like to hear from him his voice of wisdom. Excellency.
You speak from here or if you want to go here. Both options are there.
Thank you.
Excellency Minister, Excellencies, thank you for the privilege given to me to share with you some reflections on my own country and maybe the region and the world where we are, where we might be going. But before doing that, I first want to say again how privileged I have been to come to Bangladesh at this time. This is my third visit. I first came soon after I left office the first time, 2007, 2012. Then I was invited to speak at the commencement at the ULAB, and of course visit Professor Yunus, whom I've known for a long time, more than 2 decades, and it was my first concern soon after independence of Timor-Leste, in view of the absence of economy. Nothing was circulating, no money circulating. There are few currencies circulate, whether Indonesian rupiah, Australian dollar. So we didn't have yet a currency. That was in 2000. And I had read about the Grameen Bank, about Professor Muhammad Yunus, and I thought I would invite him to come to Timor-Leste. And Lamia Morshed, who's here, thank you for coming. You came, I think, in 2000, before independence, yeah. And that was the beginning of our relationship with microcredit. I had read enough about it to venture into creating my own microcredit, which, as in the end, it turned out to be a disaster. and some money from my Nobel Peace Prize, some money people gave me, with a Timor NGO called Timor Aid, the people I knew. I asked them, can you create a microcredit? I give you the money. They say, yes, we can. So we start. Anyway, to make the story short, I didn't want my name in it, and the compromise was JRH, Microcredit for the Poor. And this 5 years later, more or less, they came to see me. They say more than 70% non-repayment. I took it casually, and then what? What's the problem? Well, we are now left with $40,000 in the bank. What shall we do? I said, well, you keep the money to cover your cost, expenses, we close business. More or less, this is how it happened. And in the meantime, Lamia had been to Timor, had helped setting up a microcredit organization called Maurice Lassig, living on your own or your own means. And that slowly spread around the country. And then Professor Yunus came to Timor-Leste first time in 2004. I was foreign minister. Speaking at the Hotel Timor at the end of a couple of days of forum with NGOs, I announced I will nominate Professor Yunus for the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm sure he had been nominated many times, like Jimmy Carter had been nominated at least 10, 20 times, like President Kim Dae-jung, South Korea, had been nominated. And I became an expert in understanding the workings of the Nobel Committee. And some people totally misunderstand, and they waste so much time collecting signatures. I remember in one of the times I was in Oslo, before getting the Nobel Peace Prize. It never occurred to me, I didn't care. I wanted the Nobel Peace Prize for our church in Timor, and it never occurred to me. But I remember reading in the media, one Swiss priest or one Swiss gentleman, he had collected 1 million signatures to nominate Bishop of Chiapas, Mexico, because back then, Mexico, that area was very much in the international media, and nominating Comandante Marcos, his name, Bishop of Chiapas, and then other nominated Commandant for the Nobel Peace Prize. I thought, well, what a waste of time. The only advantage of that, yes, you collect 1 million signatures, 1 million people got to know about your cause. But by then I understood. And so I decided to nominate. And why would Professor Yunus, an economist and setting up microcredit, running a Grameen Bank, would win the Nobel Peace Prize? Why not the economics prize, which is in Stockholm, not in Oslo, not the Peace Prize? And so that was my first argument in my verbal. And in the Nobel Committee members, they never invite any nominator for conversation. They never do that. Obvious reason, you would have thousands of people flocking to Oslo doing lobby, as if you do lobby in the US Congress, for instance, So, but my explanation was not because of the simplistic argument by some, because in 91, following this, the Twin Tower World Trade Center terrorist attack, there was this simplistic argument that it is poverty that breeds terrorism. And I was invited to sit at a forum in Waldorf Astoria. The World Economic Forum that year had this 2002 decided to do a World Economic Forum in New York, in Manhattan, in tribute, solidarity with New York. And at the same podium, there was President Shimon Peres of Israel, Bill Gates, Jim Wolfenson from World Bank, and myself. I don't remember any other. There was a gentleman from Council of Foreign Relations. And Shimon Peres was the one saying, the poverty breed terrorism. And I countered that. I said, no, that's, I think would be an insult to poor people. You would have terrorists all over Africa, all over much of Asia. No. Terrorism is an ideology, it's politics. Yes, sometimes it grows out of disfranchisement, and out of alienation, out of anger, desperation, ignorant, manipulated by those who promise heaven, etc., etc. But elimination of poverty, yes, contribute to a much more peaceful, tranquil environment in a society, in a country. So that's my argument. And Grameen Bank, Professor Mohammed Yunus' contribution, first, regardless of the debate about the causes, consequence of poverty, gave hope, better life to millions of people. No Nobel laureate, no academic is so well known, respected, esteemed in the world as Muhammad. When he first arrived in Delhi, of course, that was before the Nobel Peace Prize, I went to the airport, and there he arrived in the typical, very humble fashion. I think wearing sandals, not that French brand. I forgot the name of that brand, and I would add, what a great luck, great fortunate, how fortunate Bangladeshi youth. The Bangladeshi youth of the current revolution remind me a bit of Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. But Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, they stormed their way into Havana from Sierra Maestra with guerrilla fighters. These ones unarmed, more the style of Mahatma Gandhi, and a very unique style, because even Mandela, the most celebrated Mandela, whom I had the privilege to meet, led an armed struggle. And he argued, he defended for a long time. And so only Mahatma Gandhi till the very end proposed non-violence. And the youth brought about this end of a particular regime themselves, youth, without any violence. Of course, violence happened, but not as a strategy, as a policy. And then who they choose to lead? Well, you couldn't have a better person than Professor Yunus. So then you have such a great condition for a successful revolution. Revolution in the context of changes, not the negative connotation that when you hear about revolution in this, in that successful revolutions all had a leader. The successes had leader. You cannot do changes in a school, at home, in a village without a leader or leaders. Leaders with vision, leaders with ability to articulate, to share the vision, the ideas, the promise with the people, and they embrace your vision because it meets their anxieties, their expectations, their desires. And leaders that have compassion. Leaders have to be brilliant. You have to study. Well, either self-educated or study and study and study. Understand everything that related to the society. But at the same time, you have to have the ability to communicate. If you do not communicate, people, yes, might read through books, but that's less effective. But leader that through his or her life, her work, show how committed he or she is to the society, to improve the lives of the people. Well, that's Muhammad Yunus done all his life. To lift from poverty, from desperation, millions of people, and not only in Bangladesh, all over the world. It's amazing how impactful has been the work of Grameen Bank, the work of Muhammad Yunus. So that's a privilege to come to Bangladesh, a country that produced two of the best NGOs that I know of. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I know all the NGOs in the world, good and bad. And because of my work, my lobby for the several decades, I got to know foundations, NGOs, churches, everyone. And two that the most effective that I met through my lifetime is all in Bangladesh. The other one is Grameen Bank and BRACS, Bangladesh Relief Committee, I think the name. And I visit them also. So this country has produced some of the best people, the best ideas, best institutions for change. So for that, I thank. Timor-Leste, where we are today, 22 years after independence. When we started independence in 2002, We had literally zero money. Our annual budget at the time was $68 million. $68 million. And really no economy, no investment, we're very poor. We had 20 medical doctors. We had 1 PhD. Electricity was very precarious only in parts of the city. Today we have and we had 1 university with 10,000 students. Today we have 18 universities or institutes of higher learning. Together 40,000 active students. We have more than 100 PhDs. The PhDs are from different countries of the world because until only 3, 4, 5 years ago, our university didn't have PhD programs, even master's programs, few of them. So now we have more than several hundred PhDs. We had 20 doctors. Today we have 1,300 medical doctors. And electricity covered 97% of the country or more. 96.1% was 2021 data. So 2024, that I say probably 98% of the country. Hardly any road. Today we have national roads in most of the country. Still parts that don't. Parts going to the villages with no seal roads. To 2025, we are going to invest more in rural roads, in water and sanitation. 2002, life expectancy of Timor-Leste was less than 60. Today, about 70, 71 years. Economically, today we have one of the lowest debt in the world. Our debt is only 13% of GDP, and none to commercial banks, only to ADB, to World Bank and IFC. And the debt is because we want to, because we have our investment in we create a petroleum fund, our sovereign fund, with the first oil and gas revenues in 2005, we created a sovereign fund. Initially, all the investments, all the return from the oil and gas went to US, invested in US Treasury bonds. We diversified starting 2009. Today is 40% of several $7 billion invested in equities, in the equity market, and in euro issued bonds, developed market bonds. We are looking now to diversify, invest in developing market economies, particularly in Asia. That has been at least my argument with fund managers who chose to invest in developed market bonds. I totally disagree. I told them it would be more profitable to invest in nursing homes in Europe than investing in a European developed market. We have the strongest possible relationship with Indonesia, our neighbors. From day one, the real leader of the country is not the person sitting here, because I was the whole time, 75, I was in New York and around the world advocating. It is a gentleman called Shanana Guzman. You might have read, you might have heard, super charismatic individual. 17 years in armed struggle, in political struggle, underground struggle, 8 years in prison in Indonesia. And in prison, he turned the prison into a forum. And all the prisoners loved him, Indonesian prisoners. And The prison became also a place of communication. He was able to communicate from prison. He had laptop, he had mobile phone, and then he had some prison guards working for him. Once I asked him, I sent him money from abroad. I said, listen, my friends don't ask me for where I spend the money, but could you send me a letter, a simple letter, say that you got the money? So I tell them. And so one day, a few months later, he sent me a very comprehensive report, handwritten. And I noticed in the report, there was an item, salaries for 12 prison guards. So he was paying $50 for every prison guard, the 12 $50 salary. And to make the story short, then one day I heard Mandela was going to Indonesia. I immediately decided I have to see Mandela. So with some friends in the ANC, I went to South Africa. Well, typical of ANC those days, I arrived there, nothing had been organized, absolutely nothing. I went to the ANC headquarters. They last minute herded some ANC women, activists, some young men coming to see me. You know, they had not organized anything. So last minute they called all these people coming to see me. I said, with due respect, I came to see Mandela, not you people. And they are so embarrassed. They say, he's too busy, he's too busy, too busy. I said, that's okay, I have plenty of time, I wait. They start getting impatient because I wouldn't want to leave the country. Then I met a young South African called Robert McBride. He had escaped death sentence, execution. By chance, Mandela was released, ordered his release. He is released right away. He was one of the masterminders of one of the biggest attack on the South African Air Force Club. He was captured, sentenced to death, waiting execution. Mandela is released. I don't remember how I met him. We became friends, and he was one of Mandela's favorite person. So he told Mandela that about me that this Ramuzonte, he said, he's not leaving until he sees you. And at the time, I was not known. And 10 days later, a phone call came to Robert McBride's home, 2 hours away from Johannesburg. Comrade President, ready to see Mr. Ramuzonte. So we rushed to Johannesburg, right to the house where Mandela was staying, to the first floor, and I was guided to his bedroom. Arriving there, Mandela was on the bed, awake, looking at me, smiling broadly. He said, you were the one who said you would not leave until you see me. I said, yes, that's me, and I apologize for that. And he said, I apologize for making you wait. I just came out of hospital today. He was actually the whole time in hospital on a knee surgery, which he acquired a problem in Robben Island. But I didn't want you to wait any longer, so that's why I'm receiving you in my bedroom. We spent 1 hour chatting, and I just told him, please, Comrade President, I know you're going to Indonesia. Ask to see our leader, he's in prison. To make the story short, sometime later he did go. Then he returned. I got a message. I was somewhere in Europe to go to a fixed line. The president wanted to talk with you. So I went, the phone rang. I picked up the phone. I thought it would be the secretary of Mandela. It was Mandela himself. He said, I met your leader. Great man. I'm very impressed. When can you come to South Africa? I said, Comrade President, whenever you tell me, I'll come. Tonight. I said, President, I don't have any money. I don't have the ticket. I have to find the money and the ticket. He said, just go to the airport. A ticket is there waiting for you. So I went, and Mandela told me about his meet with Miss Shannon, how he told Suharto he wanted to visit Mandela, visit Shanana, and Suharto ordered that Mr. Shanana be brought out of prison, Sipinang, to Istana Merdeka, to the presidential guest house, to meet with Mandela. And both had dinner. So that's how Mandela told me, and Mr. Shanana confirmed. So that is how Shanana, so he's the leader, and he's the one who led our reconciliation with his extraordinary authority, moral authority, his wisdom. Day one of independence, he said, we move forward. No revenge, no prosecutorial justice. Reconciliation among the Timorese family, because the violence was not only us and the Indonesian army, us among us, and the Indonesian army, not the Indonesian people. Never once in our literature, publications ever demonized the Indonesians as a people. Never once our rebels touched a single Indonesian civilian. Not a single Indonesian military capture was killed. They were treated after a few weeks, few months, put on the road to walk back to their base. Few months ago, when Secretary General Antonio Guterres visited Timor-Leste, I have a TV show called President Horta Show. So I invite Ms. Shanana and Antonio Guterres for a conversation. And Ms. Shanana, in the context of the struggle, he said, I myself, I took care of the wounds of several Indonesian soldiers who were captured. So we never demonize Muslims. Timor-Leste, 99%, 99.6% Catholic. Well, one can easily, demonize the people, generalize. Not once we generalize. So that one, it was easier when independence came, no hatred, and easy for Shanana to say reconciliation. So no, we rejected international tribunals. I even had arguments with the late Kofi Annan and Sergio Vieira de Mello. The UN created how you call a hybrid international tribunal, not the UN administration on the ground. And I told them, I'm sorry, you don't have the authority to do it. We are going to ignore it. You are bypassing the Security Council. Only the Security Council can create. You are the administering authority of a non-self-governing territory. So how can you create something like that? And they were embarrassed. So it did issue indictments and so on, but we order our prosecutor general, our police, Interpol to forget about it. So that's what facilitates the. So my point is, in our country, for peace to prevail, we had to understand our own history and have the courage, the heart, the wisdom to let it go. We honor our dead, honor our martyrs, we look after the survivors, we honor the dead, but we ourselves, we take care of the survivors. Even during World War II, we were invaded by Japan. Tens of South Timorese died. We are probably the only country in Asia that didn't demand compensation from Japan. I don't know of others, but I know many demanded compensation. Indonesia did, Philippines, Timor is the only one didn't demand compensation. Now, a few reflections on there has been much talk about the reform of the UN Security Council. Every time there is a major upsurge of failure, the conversation comes back. In 2005, I spoke at the General Assembly was Foreign Minister. Kofi Annan had floated the idea of Security Council reform, and there was plenty of discussion in 2005. And I reassured the audience when I spoke that Timor-Leste was not interested in being elected to permanent membership. And because the Italians, foreign minister at the time with sense of humor, he was referring to Germany because Germany was one of the European countries wanting a permanent membership. So Germany, Brazil, India, 4 countries, and Japan, the so-called G4 that want to campaign together. And the Italians said, those who talk about reform security council, they themselves want to be there. So I said, but let me reassure you, I'm not talking because of that. And under the current 2-year rotation, Timor-Leste probably will be eligible only 2040 something. And I said, I thank everybody, so many who have already expressed support for Timor candidacy in 2044. I made it up. But I do not think that expanding the numbers of permanent membership, non-permanent membership correspond to the current demographics, obviously, of the world. But doesn't mean necessarily that it's more representative, but doesn't mean it will be more democratic and it will be more successful. That I have an article, an essay coming out in the next few months with my own ideas about how that the UN, the collective, the global security arrangement could be more effective in preventing conflicts like Ukraine. Many of us knew it was going to happen. It just waited for a tough leader in Russia to emerge and will take action to redress what they saw as the post-Cold War encroachment on their security area. To make it simple, that it would happen. Gaza, it was there, and anyone who follow it know it is going to happen. It would happen. People misread the Palestinian resistance, and the Palestinians were seeing the 2-state solution fading away. A lot of talk of Saudi Arabia would be the great prize for the normalization relation with Israel. So Gaza happened. Why it happened? Why Ukraine happened and why Myanmar happened? The coup in 2021 happened. Everybody knew something will happen. So we talk a lot about conflict prevention, but every time we fail. I was in January in Rome, met with His Holiness Papa Francisco for 45 minutes, and I devoted at least 20 minutes of my concern about Myanmar. The tragic fate of the Rohingya people. It has been described in the media the most forgotten people in the world. And with Bangladesh shouldering the burden quite conveniently for the rest of the international community. And as long as the Rohingya and the ethnic nationalities are not taken into account in the larger rearrangement of the constitution and politics in Myanmar, this problem will continue. So the so-called, and where was preventive conflict? So I told it's all in the book, at least on Myanmar, we have a last chance to prevent the conflict from spiral out of control. How to do it? Well, first, we continue to respect ASEAN centrality. But the reality is Russia is one of the direct partners of the military. Russia is the one providing the hardware to the Tatmadaw to enable it to continue the war. But I believe that it is time for a dialogue without preconditions. And the Pope would be the great person or his envoy to facilitate such an arrangement. An encounter, a meeting of all parties in the conflict in Myanmar, no preconditions to find a way out for Myanmar. Because that pertains directly to Bangladesh, pertains directly to Thailand, to Malaysia, the rest of ASEAN. It shows again how we fail time and again on conflict prevention, and yet we talk all the time. And ironically, of the 5 permanent members of Security Council, 4 at least are directly or indirectly implicated in all of these conflicts in Ukraine, in Gaza, and elsewhere. And I'm not making any judgment about why they should be implicated. I'm just saying they are implicated. Many years ago, in my previous function, I was Special Representative of Secretary General in West Africa. I was invited to go to Geneva for sharing a platform with former President Martti Ahtisaari of Finland, with Nobel Peace Prize. And there were 700 people in the audience in Palais des Nations. And the question was asked of me, but people stopped asking Ahtisaari any question because he's more diplomat than me, diplomatic, so he kept avoiding the question. And as you know, the Nordics are not very excitable or exciting people. And it takes a lot to excite some Nordic person, and particularly Ahtisaari. So people start getting a bit bored with him, and most questions were addressed to me. Maybe they thought I was less experienced and I talked more openly. And I was asked about Syria. One question from the audience, and I said, I'm not going to give you a politically correct answer. Let me tell you the following. This war will continue for the next 5, 10 years. More than 1 million people will die before it ends. I gave an example of the war Iran-Iraq. It went on for 8 years. Biological, chemical weapons were used. More than 1 million people died. But in Iran, Iraq was easier to end the war. There were 2 strong men leading these 2 wars, Khomeini in Iran and Saddam Hussein in Iraq. There were no fragmentation of power in either Iran or Iraq. When the 2 sides were exhausted, and I said, when the sides were exhausted, they will call for peace. Syria, much more difficult, more than 100 armed groups, and so many extra powers involved. So it's still going on, and probably will get worse with further aggravating polarization of the relationship among the Security Council members, particularly P5. That I said in 2013 in Geneva in regard to a question on Syria. With Professor Muhammad Yunus, he and I, with many other more than 100 personalities, we spoke out, we did petitions. I hand over petition directly to President Widodo of Indonesia in his capacity as chair of G20 appealed to him, please be the voice of the debtor countries. One would assume that the industrialized countries, the G7 countries, in the face of COVID pandemic and the setback on the progress of the previous 20, 30 years of poverty alleviation in many countries, with the paralyzation of shipping, of international trade, that they would have the wisdom, if not the compassion, to take initiative, write off the debt of the more impoverished countries, indebted countries, to give them a chance. This did not happen. But when the first financial crisis happened in Europe, starting in Washington, subprime in 98, 99, destroy the economies of Portugal, Ireland, Greece, etc. Hundreds of billions of dollars were quickly found to rescue Deutsche Bank, French bank, British banks that were exposed in the crisis. And yet, for to write off the debt of South Asian countries, Africa, Latin America, not a gesture has been made. How can this country recover after COVID? And then before we recover from COVID, we have a Ukraine war that overnight caused a spike of commodity prices. In my own country, a bag of rice, 25 kilos, pre-Ukraine war was costing $11 for 25 kilos. And I know the price of it because I go and buy it myself. I drive my Jeep Willys, 1948. I go to the shops. I put them in the back of my Jeep, plus Super Me, the Indonesian Super Me. I drive up the villages to deliver to some families I know. So I know the price of all of it. From one day to the next, as soon as the Ukraine war happened, the bag of rice went to $11, jumped to $18, $19, $20, $21. And this was all over the world. Again, there was no thinking of writing off the debt. Even for their own people. You know, when the subprime happened in the US, millions of Americans saw their houses repossessed by the banks. And yet they imposed austerity measures, two draconian austerity measures on the Greeks, on the Portuguese, so much that it shocked even the IMF. And these were policies of Germany and the European Central Bank. Let alone, are they going to be sensitive to third world countries? So I hope that with Professor Muhammad Yunus, with the new Bangladesh emerging, I know it will take time for reforms to take place, to consolidate, that with President Lula of Brazil, the new president in Indonesia and others, we may impress upon the G7, G20 to do a new so-called Marshall Plan. I use the word only because easier, that would address some key challenges in the developing countries, namely write off the debt, with some conditionalities maybe for some countries, and focus on environment, on green economy, focus on tree planting, clean water for every village, every town, and renewable energy, education. So a master plan is very focused, no more than 5 priorities, is specifically designed for countries in South Asia, parts of Africa, parts of Latin America, and so on. That, yes, would create a world situation that would be more ethical for everybody. That, yes, you probably would reduce tensions in society, create peace. Peace doesn't come about by speeches. I have given talks ad nauseum for 30, 40 years. We have a summit of Nobel laureates regularly. And have we contributed to changing the world situation? No. Either we've been sending the wrong message, or no one really listened, or we speak only to the converted, not to the power that be. The good thing is, when you look at the behavior of governments in regards to Gaza, just look at the way in regard to Gaza. Tens of thousands of innocent people have lost their lives. Children, women, elderly. Their possession destroyed. Universities, hospitals, urban areas, totally bulldozed, like Dresden during World War II. How many tons of weapons or bombs were dropped on Gaza as compared to bombs that were dropped in the entire theater of war in Europe during the whole World War II? The data shows. And yet, every effort is made in the West to explain away the behavior of Israel. But at least you see in the streets of Europe, United States, the people speak a different language. What is the most noble about it coming out is the young people in Europe, across the board in the US, they are different from the political elites. Maybe with that, yes, there is hope that we can engineer a new global order that cannot be the assumption is to create a rival body to G7. If we create a body that is a rival to another one, there has to be a meeting of minds of all emerging global powers, whether in Asia, with those in Europe, in North America, to redesign a new order. And that is possible. We've seen through history how miracles were made after a war. And Professor Muhammad Yunus, together with many others, we can do that. We have to do that. So this is my remarks. Sorry, I haven't written a formal speech to share with you. I didn't have the chance or the time. But I'm very happy to answer any questions, further comment if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Your Excellency. It was very enlightening for us, and your remarks has broadened our horizon of understanding. And please accept our deep appreciation and gratitude. We are now opening the floor, but it will be for a very brief time. In 20 minutes, we are going to close it. So please limit your intervention within 1 minute. Yes, please. From the third row, yes.
Thank you very much for your very candid observation. It's unusual to see a head of state talk of his failures and talk of some of the things that didn't happen. Yeah, You did talk about reconciliation. You talked about not waiting for developing countries. And you talked about the inequality in Gaza, all very important things. But we have been seeing that for a very, very long time, and not a lot has happened by making those observations. I will bring it back to the Bangladeshi situation. One of the reasons I was very keen on you coming over was because I wanted to learn. Revolution failed. And while we are very excited by what is happening, it's also important to remember that things might not go as we planned. Can you tell me about some of the things that led to your revolution not failing, something that we might learn from?
Thank you. We take a few more questions. Yes, yes, sir. The Air Vice Marshal and yeah, Commodore.
Thank you very much once again. My question is about more regarding the security situation in your area, Timor-Leste. There is a dispute on South China Sea, and there is also rising, superpower rivalry over there in the South China Sea, very close to where you are located. So, how are you traversing in that area as far as the security is concerned, and especially the sea boundaries and all? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ambassador Humayun Kabir.
Excellency, thank you very much. Very exciting kind of comments you have made. Two questions. One is, you say that an order is possible, a new order is possible. Some people are talking about new disorder is possible. So how hopeful you are about the global order? Is it going in the positive direction, or it will land up in the disorderly scenario, as some people are talking about? Second question is, you have talked about Syrian problem. We are also seeing similar or almost similar scenario unfolding in Myanmar. What would be your assessment? Are we going to see a Myanmar, a new Syria in this part of the world? Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead. Only question, please.
Thank you, Excellency. Your revolution had been successful. One person has already mentioned. I would like to know in World of Freedom Index, your country's position is 20, ahead of many champions and runners-up. France, UK, most importantly, USA at 55, and your position is 20 in World Press Freedom. What's the secret? How do you achieve that? And another short question is on the ASEAN centrality. When if you talk about the written documents, the U.S. national security strategy, there it is mentioned that ASEAN they consider as the central for Indo-Pacific strategy. Where do you find the deficiency or lacking in this respect? So you have mentioned that ASEAN should have centrality. Thank you.
Sir, short question, please.
It has been an honor listening to you. As we see that the global order, which has been hijacked by the West, has failed, and we don't see anything good coming out from there because of the self-interest that is ingrained in that world order. But can Central Asia and Far East, and with the help of Africa and South America, create a new world order, really, to become a counterforce to the existing world order, and something could emerge from the leaders and the countries which are endowed with resources to create a new world order and a new world development strategy.
Thank you very much, DGP Imran. And then I think we have to listen to our guest of honor, honorable guest of honor.
Excellency, thank you very much once again. You mentioned in your excellent speech strongest possible relationship with Indonesia, Timor-Leste, you have that. That triggered me to ask you this question. Timor-Leste and Bangladesh, we actually share many commonalities, small state, surrounded by very big state, and so on and so forth. So you have a very excellent relationship. We have been trying for the last 54 years to have excellent relationship with our biggest neighbor, but we find that they misread our revolution, our spirit of the population. What goes wrong? Can you just highlight? Thank you so much, Excellency.
Thank you indeed. Now we request our honorable guest of honor to respond to some of the questions from the floor, and then if we have time, we can collect some more questions.
Well, the first question, I would say, in general, I'm not referring to any country specifically. Ups and downs, progress, setbacks, a reality throughout the world in many countries, including in the West. Of course, in the West, they have been fortunate to not have had some of the conflict that we in the developing world had. They are wealthier, they are better protected, they have institutions, but nevertheless, even in the West, they have not escaped some failures and setbacks. So that there are setbacks in Indonesia, or in Thailand, in Timor, in Bangladesh, in India. Many people are always too fatalistic or pessimistic, and it's the end. I said, no, come on, like today with the re-election of President Trump, many of my friends in Washington, in the US, they're moving out. Some of them, we are now meeting with the Italian consulate in LA. We want to move to Italy at least for 1 year, and so on and so on. And I said, no, it's 4 years, 4 years mandate. And Donald Trump was in the first term. He threatened to do a lot of damage, but no real damage was made except the crazy tariff war, which like shooting yourself in the foot in the trade war with China. And they seem to forget that the hundreds of billions of dollars. A few years ago, $3 or $4 trillion Chinese money in the US treasury bonds, and now China has been withdrawing the last few years. And so the world and the economies are so interconnected, and the US also so dependent on financing, including from people like Timor-Leste. Yeah, we put in the beginning of our petroleum sovereign fund, 100% of the revenues we put in US treasury bonds. And that was a wise move because in the financial crisis that happened in 2007, 8, 9, Timor-Leste was one of the few countries that didn't lose any money. Singapore, Norway, overnight lost more than $100 billion each. Well, but in the financial market, in the equity market, well, you lose if you invest. There's a crisis, you panic together with everybody else, and you sell. Well, we didn't lose any. It was in US Treasury bond. But then, after diversification, we had more than 1,000 portfolios of investments around the world. And when the war in Ukraine happened, overnight we lost, quote unquote, we lost more than $1 billion in the market. We didn't panic. Well, it will recover. So that is normal. So in politics, of course, the difference is, God, in the process, hundreds of thousands of lives lost, poverty increased, the silent death of the poor around the world. There's not much we really can do except when I get to that point of answer. South China Sea. Our position very simple and very straightforward. Timor-Leste, thanks to upholding international law and law of the sea, in managing our dispute with Australia over maritime boundary, in the beginning of the situation, Australia was claiming well beyond the median line. Australia based its claim to a maritime boundary that extends almost to our coastal area based on the so-called continental shelf doctrine. You're familiar with that. We base our position on the law of the sea, UNCLOS, on the median line. Negotiations started. We resort to the UN under a clause in UNCLOS that facilitate a mechanism for the sides involved. So Australia accepted the UN jurisdiction, and so the two sides started the dialogue, negotiations. Several years, by April 2018, we signed the agreement in New York, witnessed by Secretary General, whereby Australia accepted our position, median line, that between us and Australia. Two things: our fortunes in terms of oil and gas increase, but Australia also agree on the median line after depleting several oil fields that they've been exploiting before the maritime boundary. Buffalo, Corallina, Laminaria, all depleted. But showing pragmatism by our leader, Shannon, he was the chief negotiator. He didn't demand compensation for the previous years of ruthlessly exploiting those fields that are now in our maritime boundary side. And to show when there is goodwill, there is possibility of resolving issues. We have demanded for 20 years that a pipeline should come from Greater Sunrise, maybe one of the biggest gas fields in whole of Asia, from the Timor Sea to Timor-Leste. Australia demanded that the pipeline should go to Australia. And all kinds of arguments were made why it should go to Australia. Only the Australians understood why it should go to Australia. No one else understood that, because it's only 150 miles to Timor-Leste, 500 miles to Australia. Besides, their taxes are enormous. We have almost no tax. Timor-Leste is one of the countries that has the lowest taxes in Asia. And but finally, maybe this month, next month, we'll sign the agreement for the development of Greater Sunrise, very likely with a pipeline coming to Timor-Leste. So with patience, so without international law, well, a small country like Timor-Leste and other, not so small, big enough, but still not powerful, always lose. So we in favor of law of the sea. However, when it comes to the South China Sea, we hold the view also that the claimant states bilaterally, because the claim is bilateral. Some countries have a claim in ASEAN, others no. Cambodia has no maritime boundary claim. Indonesia, very limited because of Natuna. So some argue it should be multilateral negotiation. Based on my experience of 50 years, I said, make no sense whatsoever that you bring something that is bilateral in nature. It's a bit like telling in Europe, there are disputes between Spain, Europe, and Morocco, Tunisia. In Morocco, more difficulty because not only vis-a-vis with Morocco, but with Western Sahara. And so you're going, and none of that is putting it to some UN international multilateral mechanism. So bilateral negotiation between claimant states in ASEAN or whatever with China, that is one of the other claimants. But I also said, ideally, it should be that the ASEAN, all the claimant states plus China, which is a claimant state, should show wisdom and convert South China Sea into a sea of peace and cooperation, free of any militarization, free of predatory activities that destroy the environment, the fishery stock, and so on. When I met with President Xi Jinping in China in July on a state visit, he said, I agree with your views, referring to me because they have read my views before. On bilateral, they were set to resolve claimant states. He said, I agree with your vision, South China Sea, a sea of peace. The problem, the tendency of some countries always look for enemies where there are no enemies. And I have to say, frankly, I'm not a brightest person on earth, so I take more time to study than normal people. That, you know, you don't need to study much, you understand right away. With me, it takes a long time to study. Yeah. But I can look at every possible angle. I cannot find how China can be a threat anywhere in Asia or beyond. Because Chinese prosperity, peace, stability is that they also maintain internal peace and stability, and that Asia grows with them, that Bangladesh, India grows with them. Any unmanageable tension in the region would be serious setback for China as well. So the only thing that China is, unlike 50 years ago, it was a poor agrarian socialist country, is that today it is really a financial technical superpower. It has invested tens of billions in artificial intelligence, leaving behind the US and European. They are revolutionizing solar vehicles. The Europeans talk a lot about getting rid of fossil fuel. So China produced electric cars. And the Europeans imposing tariffs on Chinese electric cars because they are dumping electric cars in Europe. Well, isn't China helping you to clean the air in Europe? So it is more an economic matter than. You remember in the 80s, in the US, it was Japan bashing. I lived in the US at the time. It was Japan bashing. And worse became when the Japanese bought Rockefeller Center. For the Americans, Rockefeller Center is like Notre Dame for the French. Rockefeller Center, I think, only some 50-year-old building. And so they went, because some economists predicted that Japan would overtake the US as the #1 economy. It didn't happen. So the Americans calmed down, no more Japan bashing. Now it is Chinese bashing. And this will pass. Important is that consultation, dialogue, red phone, red lines maintained between the powers that be, the military, to avoid any miscalculation in South China Sea until such a time we reach an agreement on that South China Sea is a freedom of navigation for all, no domination by anyone. Is that possible? Yes, I think it's possible. With China is possible? Yes, I believe it's possible. Myanmar. So in terms of ASEAN, Timor-Leste, we will probably join next year. What can we contribute to ASEAN? I always said with humility, with modesty. Our best contribution to ASEAN is that we in Timor-Leste maintain peace, tranquility in our own country, that we don't become another Myanmar. That will be our best contribution, that we remain very peaceful country. We have a zero political violence in Timor, zero political violence, zero ethnic, religious-based tensions. We don't have a bank robberies. We don't have organized crime. Maybe we don't have organized crime partly because, organized crime requires professionalism. You have to be competent. We are generally in Timor very disorganized. So our own criminals have not found the motivation to organize themselves properly. So we don't have organized crime even. And so that is how we are. We do everything by, last minute. If you tell someone in Timor, a leader, we have to plan for 2028. What the hell is talking about? But when we decide to work, like the Pope confirmation of his visit to Timor was in January this year. In April, when our government approved a plan and everybody started working to have everything ready for the Pope's visit, 700,000 people estimated to be attending the Mass. How to organize water, fresh water, drinking water for everybody, toilet facilities, food. I always ask this question again and again. Security. Well, there was not one single incident, even of pushing and shoving. People really push and shove, but not to the point where some stampeding happened. There was enough water for everybody, there was enough toilets for everybody. The Vatican security were incredibly impressed. But we did have a tremendous support from Australian and Indonesian police, helping us with modern monitoring devices to follow the situation. Zero problem. And we did that beginning in April and to September. Millions of dollars invested in infrastructure, and we did it. And so I told our side, this was a test case for whether we are capable of joining ASEAN or not. Because it has been difficult to join ASEAN. The ASEAN leaders made me think. I'm very religious, I believe in heaven, and I have had images of heaven. But when ASEAN leaders tell us about the conditions, the strict conditions of to join ASEAN, I thought, God, it's easier to join heaven, to be in heaven than joining ASEAN. And, maybe you first have to go to heaven, you get cleansed, and then you join ASEAN. And but then they relented a bit, and so we have fulfilled already more than 75% of the so-called roadmap, the milestones. ASEAN friends like Anwar Ibrahimi and Indonesia and the others, they already say, let's forget about the roadmap, let the Timorese join, and then continue the process of improving and adaptation. And so in terms of long-term, I would say, when I look at the BRICS, I cannot avoid but think that it is a rival to G7. the rival to G7, and it is. You see the reaction by Donald Trump. He threatened 100% tariffs on BRICS if adopted a single currency and all of that. It might come to nothing, but why did we have to reach to the point where some countries have to turn what was simply innocent academic from this bank in UK or US? It was an economist who concocted the phrase BRICS just by telling Brazil, India, China, and Russia will reach such GDP in such year. From that became an organization. Well, a bit complicated to have different elephants in a China room. And why not the countries aspiring for BRICS, why not dialogue with the G7 and come up, because these are the countries that have the possibility of create a new world order. Why not patient dialogue between all of them with the G7 countries? But maybe, yes, maybe that's going to be impossible. We know how G7 expelled Russia from G7. They expelled, no? Because initially Russia was invited in, then expelled. And why not China in G7? Yeah, that's what create this missing, this gap. So why not bring everyone together rather than two additional rival blocks? I'm afraid it is not going to help anyone. So I just, to share with you one. In '95, I gave an interview, first ever interview to CNN. Before I won the Nobel Peace Prize, I was not too well known, but somehow CNN was interested and gave me time, space for more than 20 minutes in the program called Diplomatic License with Richard Roth. In that interview, remember, May '95, I said, within 2 to 3 years, there will be a major financial crisis. The Suharto regime era will come to an end because of economic crisis, increasing illegitimacy of the regime. Then it will be easier to negotiate a solution to the Timor problem. Richard Roth then went to talk to the Indonesian ambassador, Wisnu Mutri, a very refined gentleman, and not very articulate, but at that point he made a very interesting comment. The journalist asked him, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Ramos Horta said within 2 to 3 years, the Suharto regime will fall. And the ambassador responded, Mr. Ramos Horta is always too optimistic. Well, exactly 2-3 years later, the Suharto regime fell. Exactly as I had predicted. And financial crisis that happened first in Thailand with the baht. And then came down to the worst hit was Indonesia. Created problems in Malaysia between Mahathir and Anwar. Philippines survived because President Fidel Ramos had made reforms previous years, and it was solid. South Korea collapsed. That resulted in the election of President Kim Dae-jung that year. My point with that is that there are situations in the world that have come unstuck. There has to be change. The problems accumulate in such a scale, domestically in one country or more, and globally, that somehow something will have to. I think we are reaching the point without another world war. World War II created the new UN, created and generated into action on the Marshall Plan, generated the UN Charter, the Human Rights Declaration, and all of that. We don't need that. The world society have advanced to such an extent that I believe the accumulation of this with right leaders and leaders who are in BRICS, leaders who are in the global south. I don't, when you talk about climate change in the debate generally around the world, always pointing fingers at the richer countries. Yes, they are the most responsible. Timor is responsible only for 0.003% of CO2 emissions. But I've said, let's plant more trees. Let's clean up our rivers. It was not the Chinese or the Americans who came and dumped plastic in our rivers. We did it. We are the ones who cut off the trees. So let's do it. If in every island, every country, we do what we must do to restore environment, well, we will have a better world. So, but then the combination of mines, combination of resources, because today there is more money in the individuals in Asia. There is more liquidity in Asia than liquidity in Europe and the US together, put together. So why not an Asian-led initiative? Rather than blaming always again and again the West, the scapegoat, why? People like Mohammed Yunus and others in Asia, led by someone like him, with the banks, Asian families, Asian foundations, put up trillions of dollars for an Asian fund. First, to resolve problems in Asia and extend to Africa. Yes, I personally will put up a paper on that. Will it work? Well, we'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that was my second speech. I think I answered all the questions raised, yeah. So.
Thank you indeed, Your Excellency, Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, for your very sagacious response. Now we have come to the close of the open discussion segment. We are going to listen to our Honorable Foreign Advisor. Now, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I have, my officers have given me a nicely worded, written speech, but I find that much of it has become redundant after what you have said. So I'll not go into this. I'll just make a few points. First of all, let me just congratulate you for the excellent speech that you have given. You have mesmerized the people basically, and the question and answers also done in your own way. And I'm sure everyone will agree with me here present here that we could not have we could not in any way have a better time utilized during the time that you have spoken. Just a few issues. For example, solving problems bilaterally. Of course, most of the problems we have to ultimately solve bilaterally. The one problem that I don't know how much you faced, probably you faced is late, but then we must remember Thucydides that who said that the strong do what they want to do and the weak accept what they have to accept. And unfortunately, the world largely runs on those principles even today. the end of the Cold War did not really bring peace. It dispersed the conflicts in some ways. Maybe there are the possibilities of confrontation between the most powerful receded, but then it is again coming back. We are in a situation in which we have to be careful so that there is no exchange of miscalculations between the two, between the different powerful countries. And the sufferers will be all of the people. In fact, the lack of peace in any of the countries or any part of the world actually is a lack of peace for the entire world in these interconnected days. There has been, talk of the UN reform saying that the veto power holders initially they wanted us to believe that by giving the powers to them, the most powerful ones of that time, the world is going to see more peace. But we have seen that the veto powers that were bestowed on those countries did not really go for ensuring peace in the world, but to just look after their own interests. There has been a talk of a number of countries who are also very rich and very powerful these days, who have come up after the formation of the United Nations in the 40s. But would that help in any way? Say, if we have, instead of 5, if we have 10 countries who have veto power, is that going to help the other 150 countries or 190 countries? It's not, in my opinion. Again, it will give, as we call it, that has been a coinage of the term, that new centers of privilege only, but that is not going to help the others. I think the more immediate question for this region as a whole, this region of the world, if we count it South Asia and Southeast Asia, maybe East Asia also. Yes, there is problem in the South China Sea, but we don't contemplate that this is going to bring up any, hot war very, very shortly. But we have the simmering problem just next door to Bangladesh in Myanmar. You have also mentioned this. I think this is one issue which is bothering all the countries around, and this is one problem that we need to find a resolution as quickly as possible. We have this 1.3 million refugees in our country. We have the very positive possibility of a balkanization in this country. Balkanization is not going to resolve the issue. It's going to, in my opinion, it's going to only exacerbate the issue further. How do we find a solution in which Myanmar becomes peaceful again? And I do not believe that we are going to go back to status quo ante in Myanmar, because the actors and the forces have completely changed from what it was, say, 5 years back or 10 years back. For the Rohingyas, of course, it is 8 years back. The problem is much older, but then these 1.3 million people, they have lost almost everything, and in a complete area of uncertainty they are living, because even those who are speaking about a resolution of the Myanmar problem, rarely they mention about the Rohingyas. They think that the Arakan Army and the other the three Brotherhood Alliance and then the NUG just ending the war in Myanmar and then finding an arrangement. But not much is being spoken about Rohingyas. Yeah. It is for sure that in a future Myanmar, if the Rohingya issue is not resolved, it is not going to bring peace to Myanmar even. It is going to be our problem. It's going to be the problem of the Rohingyas themselves. But it will be impossible to bring peace to Myanmar unless the Rohingya issue is resolved. It's the question of justice against a tremendous injustice done to these people. It's the question of stability in the region, not only in Myanmar, but also the surrounding countries. And I would just end by appealing to you that with that tremendous reputation and clout that you have developed, personal clout that you have, I would expect that you take an initiative and be more vocal in your region and in ASEAN to make it clear to the people who take decisions that unless you resolve this, unless there is justice for the Rohingyas, there is not going to be peace in the region. And we want peace. We don't want war. We have no intention of engaging in any conflict. But then, unless this issue is resolved, there will be no peace for Bangladesh, and there will be no peace in the region. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Foreign Advisor. We have come to the close of the seminar today, and it's now just my pleasant duty to thank everyone. And first of all, I'd like to thank you, Your Excellency, Honorable President of Timor-Leste, for making us proud and to be here, and then for sharing your wisdom with us and for enlightening us. And thank you indeed, and we are really grateful and deeply appreciative of your keynote speech today. And that you have thought of giving a talk in an institute that really inspired us, and we were hoping for your kind presence today. And we had you, and we are so happy. And we'd also like to thank Honorable Foreign Advisor to be with us and to also give us a lot of understanding and also to voice our appeal that you have voiced to the Honorable Guest of Honor. We are at one with you. We need peace, and we work for peace in every level and every platform. We thank all the participants who are here, particularly the excellencies and diplomats who have come here from the region, from South Asia and Southeast Asia. They are in our close neighborhood, and with whom we are working in bilateral and also in regional platforms, and particularly for peace and prosperity. And that is the goal of our people and of our revolution that we had recently. And also distinguished participants from different sections of the society who are here. We have come to listen to you and benefit from your wise words. So we thank them for taking their time and coming here. And we also thank the media friends who are here, and they are going to give good coverage of media of your deliberation here. And we thank at the end my institute, BIISS, and every staff, every researchers and officials of the institute for making this arrangement. They have been organizing the venue and making preparation for quite some time. And you have really done a very good job. And thank you very much. Thank you all. And we come to the close of the meeting. Yes. Yes. Now, few formalities, ceremonies, the giving of crest to the honorable guest of honor.
Thank you, sir, for getting back to me. And also thank you for your vote of thanks and giving the thanks to the guest of honor as well today. And now, at this stage, we have 2 more events to go. On behalf of the Institute, first of all, I would like to request our esteemed Director General to hand over the Peace Memento to our guest speaker, His Excellency Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, as a token of appreciation for gracing this auspicious occasion. Thank you. At this stage, I humbly request Honorable guest of honor of today to sign the Bees Visitors book.